the Ranke Simplex.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. This is one from the Ranke Brewery, who are based in Belgium, in a place called Duttignon. I think that's how it's pronounced. Needless to say, they're from the Hainaut, Wallonia region of Belgium, i.e. the French-speaking part. But I quite like what this lot do. Now, they're renowned for their emphasis on the hops that they put in their beers. And I've tried, they do one called a Triple X, and it was a bitter. And in my naivety, I thought it was a Belgian take on an English bitter. Nah. It most certainly wasn't. It was a very, very bitter, how could I describe it? Almost like a triple, and I wasn't sure about it. You could tell they had just really emphasised the alpha acid in the hops, and it was really bitter. I mean, talk about doing what it said on the bottle, but it didn't put me off them. And they do another one which is a step down from that, and this is a single X. And it's interesting because they've got this is not a Pils on the front, and it isn't, but there's a reason that they've put that. And this is an ale, it's top fermented, but it's got all the characteristics of a lager stroke pilsner. Now, I'm not going to go into the ingredients here, I'll do that in the next section, but it's got a lot in common with both looks and ingredients of a bottom fermented beer, but it's actually top fermented. And I decided to drink this because I've just tried the Elgood's sour ale, and yeah, I really couldn't make my mind up about that. I did finish it, but I thought I don't think many people are going to like it, and I didn't struggle with it. I couldn't work out the flavours, and that was a little bit disconcerting. It was like it was like a beer I've tasted before. It was like a Gers, but I thought, let's try and stick to something a little bit more down to earth. So I've got this stuff, and this lot, as I say, are from Duttignon, which is in the Wallonian part of Belgium. They have been going since around 1930, and I think they've been family owned since then, and they've steadily, they were doing lemonade and beer. They had a bottling plant there, and they eventually ditched the lemonade bottling and just concentrated on the beer, and that's where this is now. And they're based near Ypres, which is not too far from, I'm saying it's not too far, that is the region where most Belgian hops are grown. There's one Belgian hop in here, and there's a couple of others, so I'm just going to stop it there. Let's get on to the next section. Let's talk about the ingredients. Right, quick bit about the beer. 330ml bottle, 4.5%. This is not a Pils. I'll just show you that on the label, if you can see that. There's the label. There is ye olde cap. Simplex. Why have they called it Simplex? Who knows? Yeah, there's a load of stuff in Flemish: malt, hops, sugar, yeast. That's your ingredients. Now here's where it gets interesting. The IBUs on this are 50, which is really bitter if it's what they're touting it to be, like a lager. 50 that's really high. I mean, for a West Coast IPA, I'd say that was yeah, that was bordering on the quite bitter. But for what they are calling a top fermented, or what is in their eyes a top fermented Pilsner, that's really bitter. So I'm wondering what the hell this is going to taste like. Now, I don't have much information on the malt. I imagine it's just local malt that they're brewing this with. But the hops are interesting. They've got a German hop. They've got Hallertau Mittelfrüh, which is one of them hops that you occasionally find in German beers. But it's interesting that they've used it in this one. They also use, now I do mention this quite a few times in my reviews, that the Belgians have got a bit of a taste for English hops. And they've got Brewer's Gold in this as well, which is the same hop that was used in the Yorkshire Pudding beer that I reviewed and absolutely loved. I mean, that is a fucking fantastic beer. If you ever get a chance to try that, get some. That was really nice. You won't see it if you live down in the south. You won't see it, but up north you will probably see that. That's a really nice, easy drinking English ale. Really does taste good. But the interesting hop that they've got in here is one called Warneton. I don't know whether that's the right pronunciation, but I'm pronouncing it Warneton 7784. Now, that's named after the little region that hop was grown. But I'd heard of Warneton before. That was a location that I've written a book about the 5th Royal Irish Lancers. That was my great uncle's regiment. They didn't have a regimental history that was available in print, so I thought, because I was trying to research, what he did when I found out his regiment and all that, and I found all his records, and I thought, that's an absolute disgrace. That's a whole regiment of soldiers who fought in World War One, and nobody knows their history. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to write a history. So I've written a history about that regiment. But during the research, and it was a fucking long period of research that I had for that book, I was coming across all the locations in the war diary, in the National Archives. And Warneton, they spent quite a long time in there. And Warneton is not too far from Ypres, which is where the hop growing region of Belgium is. And you can see why they were sort of billeted there in Warneton, because it's about 20 or 30 miles away from Ypres. But that's where I've heard of it before. So when I discovered that they were using that hop, I thought, I've heard of Warneton, and that's not in English. It does sound English in its pronunciation, but it's not. That's a Belgian village, I imagine. I think it's a village, and it's near the hop. Well, it is part of the hop growing region. Anyway, I'm fucking totally deviating on this beer. Let's get it open before my mouth dries up. I've got a mouth like a camel snatch, so let's get it open. Right, you saw the cap. I'll just leave that down now. Now, I don't know what sort of glass it's supposed to be poured out into, but I'm pouring it into this one. 50 IBUs. That is a fucking major alarm bell. What is that going to taste like? Because that's really bitter. Really bitter. Yeah, it's cloudy, unfiltered, unpasteurised. I think this will have bottle condition. Wow, look at the amount of yeast that's gone into that. The cloudiness. I saw that just being exiting from the bottle. Wow, the aroma. Oh, that's really bitter. That is like intense green grass. I can smell some candy sugar on that, but that's really, really grassy. That's the dominating aroma. I am getting a little touch of clove there now, and some of that sweet candy sugar, but it's just dominated with that grassy herbal style aroma. And I'm Sort of getting coriander there now. Coriander, clove, green grass, green herbal. It's like shagging in a campsite. Fucking intense. There it is. Very cloudy. Yellowy orange colour. Looks almost like a German Weizen. Head's dissipating. Only 4.5%, but there's a lot of carbonation in it. Let's investigate, see what's going on. Bottoms up. Oh, fuck me, that is bitter. Oh, that finish. That's definitely unique, I will say that. It's all about extremes tonight with the beers. I've just tried that sour beer from Elgood, and now this stuff. Now these got a reputation. They love boiling up the hops and getting the alpha acid going in there. And I'm definitely getting that type of oily bitterness from this one. Carbonation is quite nice. There's a fair amount of spice in there. Clove mainly. There's other weird flavours in there. It is Belgian, it's definitely Belgian. You can get that. Quite refreshing though, and quite pleasant. There is a bitterness to it. Bitter herbs. So if you can imagine, lots of sage, nutmeg, well, spice and herbs, I should say, coriander, that type of flavour. There's also some of that candy sugar. I am getting that, but it's not dominant. It's not really like a blonde. It has got some of the characteristics of it, but there's big differences as well. Just definitely got that aroma before. Pepper. There's a lot of, that's a bit like white pepper. That's the other. Fennel. There's a definite bitterness on the finish though. It isn't bad, but it's not blowing my mind, and it's certainly not making me think I need to buy another one of these. Elements of orange peel in there now as well. Zesty orange. Almost wit beer. It's got a lot of the characteristics of a wit beer, including the spice, the orange zest, and the herbal notes. And it ain't bad, I have to say, but I'm just struggling whether I would buy one again, because you can get them type of flavours in better beer from Belgium. It was quite easy drinking though, I will say that. Certainly not unpleasant, but it does remind me of a lot of the other Belgian beers that are on the market now. Now, for example, if I was to, I mean, it's 4.5%, so this is one you could sort of drink and you wouldn't get Belgian legs for too quickly. But if I wanted a beer of that ABV and I wanted these type of flavours, I would go for the Rochefort table beer, or the La Trappe low ABV beers, because they've more or less got the same style flavours in it. But it ain't bad. I mean, I must say, it's not bad. But you wouldn't mistake that for any other country. This has definitely got Belgium written all over it. It ain't bad, I will say that. It doesn't blow me away, but it's certainly not unpleasant. So what's the verdict on Ranke Simplex? It's got Simplex written on it, but this is quite complex, believe it or not. I should call this complex. There's all the characteristics you would find or hope to find in a Belgian beer. They haven't really given this a classification. They've not said it's a blonde. They've not said it's a, well, it can't be anything else apart from the blonde or a single with that ABV 4.5. It's quite nice. It's got all the flavours you'd expect. The coriander, a little bit of nutmeg in there, a lot of herbal, grassy, green grass notes, if you know what I mean. And there's also that undercurrent of orange zest. There's a little bit of sweetness on there from the sugar that's been put into here. And yeah, it's a typical Belgian beer from what my palate is telling me. I will say one thing about it. It's quite drinkable, and it's got everything I'd be looking for in a Belgian beer without the hefty ABV. So you could session this, but this wouldn't be my go-to beer if I wanted a low ABV Belgian beer. But it ain't bad, I will say that. I'm going to give that a 7.5 out of 10. And am I going to recommend it? Yeah, why not? It's quite flavour intense, I will say that. It doesn't lack character at all. There's definite strong flavours in there, considering that it's a sort of, well, they're calling it a pils. This is not a pils. I don't know why they've put that on there. Maybe some people think it is, but you would not mistake that for a pils. That's more like a Belgian blonde. Intensely flavoured Belgian blonde, I would say. But it's nice. And listen, if it's a fucking toss-up between this and shit like Leffe, I mean, this wins all day long. I quite like it. It's nice. I'm going to give it 7.5. I think that's a fair mark. That's a solid 7.5. And if you see it, pick it up. But just don't go out of your way, because these flavours are available in a lot of other Belgian beers. And remember, beer is working class champagne.